So it's really interesting about that, Daniel. And we've had other guests talk about this. They didn't fit into the mold, especially when it comes to education. There's a very specific type of student that excels and other people who are intelligent and who have many other gifts don't do well in that very restrictive environment. So, but some people who don't fit into that mold go this path and they go, well, I'm dumb, and they go this path and it's they have destructive behavior and they struggle their entire lives. And then other people go, you know what, it's you guys, the system isn't like for me. I'm fine, I'm just not like the rest of these students, but I'm smart. How did you delineate and determine, you know what, I don't identify as stupid. I don't identify as a problem. I identify as smart and not fitting in here. Was that from your parents? Was that something that you just innately knew? Because not everyone who doesn't fit in like that goes down a path of success.
I think for me, I knew what my strengths were, and I just had to play this game of school. And my mum would say, look, you got to go. There's nothing we can do. You can go to the public school. It's going to be worse there. Just stay here and let's not make a big deal about it. And so my mum was super cool. She just said, just do the best of your ability and let your results shine through, whatever that's going to be. So when it came to sports, I was the chosen one. So I'd play sports. I'd win the running carnivals. I'd win the high jump, the long jump. I'd go to the swimming carnivals. And I had to learn how to swim because I had to learn how to breathe properly. And I became a good swimmer. So now I'm winning all the swimming races. And so who do they want as the sports captain? Me. And so I played to that strength, and that worked out for me. However, I remember that I was very introverted at school, and I remember the first day in year 7. I was walking to school, mum's there, she walks into school, she stops a guy and she says, hello, what's your name? And the guy says, my name's Dean Toe. Remember his name, first day of school. And mum said, congratulations, Daniel, you just made your first friend. And I'm like, oh my gosh.
Oh, my mom is the worst. Yeah.
And so I loved hanging out with the girls. I really did. I'm not a boy's boy. I loved hanging out with the girls because they talked and they had good conversations. So I'd go talk to them. And then the other people, I'd look around, I'd say, hey, you're nice people, but I don't want to be like any of you. I'm different and I want to be me. And so I remember getting bullied by the teachers. I remember even the students bullying me. I had a beautiful car. It was only worth $5,000. Other people had $30,000 cars. And I'd take it to parties and people would pour beer on it because they were jealous of my $5,000 car. But what I realised was that they were probably jealous of my confidence. I couldn't be bullied. I couldn't be pushed around. I seemed to know who I was. And so I was just like, whatever, I know what I want. I know where I'm going. This is just part of the journey and I've got to stick it out. And I stuck it out until I got sick. But I'm pretty sure I made myself sick so I didn't have to go back to school.
And well, first of all, I have to ask, what kind of car was it? Because someone is like, what kind of car was that? That sounds amazing. What kind of car was it?
Well, I would have been 17 when I had my driver's license. So that would have been 1997. I had a 1971 Datsun 1600, a Nissan, and it was $2,500. And I spent $2,500 to put some nice wheels and to paint it. And it was still a 1971 Datsun.
Is it like a bright, splashy color?
I don't know about some of the cars in America, but there was a beautiful car and it was called a Subaru Impreza WRX. And they bought out one of the first editions and it was this beautiful midnight blue and it had gold wheels and that was the standard WRX. And my cousin had one and that was about $35,000 back then. And I loved the colour, so I went and got my Datsun, which was a rally car, painted the same colour and had gold wheels. So it did stand out. People were jealous of it. But it was more about the look of it than the value, than the price.
And the confidence, to your point, that it was something different. If everybody has this, you had the confidence to say, you know what, I like this color. I'm going to do the color. I'm going to do the wheels. I don't care if you like it or not. I like it. And there's a lot of research out there that shows that children who had to overcome a disability end up being more successful in life. Do you believe that because of your disability and because of the things that you had to overcome, you're able to have found the success that you found? Would you be who you are without having those struggles?
What the learning disabilities gave me was resiliency. So I had to fall down And I was always getting knocked down, whether it be by the teachers or the other students or exams. I was always getting knocked down. So I had to get back up more times than anybody else. So what I developed was resiliency. So I went through that 5 years of remedial therapy, and then I started to get tonsillitis about 6 times a year. I got teenage chickenpox. I got Epstein-Barr virus, chronic fatigue. And I remember being in bed for like 18 hours a day. And I was like, gee, I'd love to get out of bed, but I got no energy. I remember my head hanging off the back of the bed, and my parents made me a bed in the living room, and I could see the kitchen upside down. I'm thinking to myself, gee, I'd love to move my head right now, but I didn't have the energy to move the head. So I'd been knocked down. I eventually left school, and it was kind of a good thing because they said, Daniel, look, you've had a lot of time off school. You're not going to pass. You'd have to repeat. We don't want to see you go through that. And then I left. And then I went to business college, and even at business college, I still couldn't pass the exams. And so what I used to say to the teachers was, I know the answer. I just can't get it out of here into the paper. You want me to do this computer-based exam? Let me just verbalize the answer and I'll blow your mind. But they wouldn't do it. And so I had to just figure out another way to get what I wanted. And so it was that resiliency that really gave me that advantage. So by the time I got my first career, I had the resiliency that nobody else had. And so I just put the foot on that accelerator pedal and took off. So the advantage for me was the resiliency. That was the byproduct that is worth a ton of money to me today.
And you ended up also being in professional sports, which is pretty surprising considering where you were as a child, not able to run. How did you end up becoming the first professional wakeboarder in the UAE?
I started border skiing at age 5. I set a goal to become an Australian champion when I was 16, and it only took me 9 years to achieve the goal. But my brother had the same goal, but everything came easy to him. Everything came easy. You'd say, do this trick, he'd do it. Do it like this, he'd do it. And so I had to fight harder through that period of time. And my biggest problem in my sporting career was I was so afraid to try and fail because I'd tried so many things and nothing ever seemed to work for me, where everybody else just kind of did it so easily. So for me to learn the basics, it took me so much longer. But because I learned them, I had better foundations. And over time, I was able to do harder tricks because I had those solid foundations. But as people got ahead of me, what I realized was that I did have a lot of fear. And my brother pulled me aside one day and he said, they used to call me Danny Danger. He'd say, Danny Danger, he'd be like, you're better than all of us. But your problem is you get caught up in your head. You're stuck in your head. Just go out and do the tricks. And I said, what do you mean? He goes, you go to a competition, you beat everybody. And when the pressure's on, you perform. But when there's no pressure, you don't perform. And I didn't get it. And he said, look, if we turn the camera on, you'll go out and you do a really hard trick and you've never tried it. And he said, so when the pressure's on, when the camera's on, you'll perform, but you'll never do that in practice. And so I started to understand what my focus was. My focus was on not getting hurt. And I think because I'd had so many setbacks at school with education, I had so many setbacks with my physical body that had taken so much effort to overcome them that now I'm afraid of getting hurt. And I always remember that. I'm like, I don't want to do that because I don't want to get hurt, because I knew I was so far behind. It took me so long to catch up. So on my way for this journey, I'd become state champion 3 times. I even competed in the extreme games, which is for the best in the world. And then I had 2 years of consecutive back-to-back knee operations. And so through all of that, I still got the pain. I still got injured. And then I had to take a break. So I took a break and I started in a career. But every day I went to the career, it was a conflict because I wanted to play sport. And then I went and travelled the world because I wanted to reconnect with that dream. And so I went to the United Kingdom and started to train. I went over to the east coast of America and started to train. I went down to Florida, started to train. And when I was coming back for the World Championships, I busted a rib. And so every time I'm getting close to what I want, I get injured. And so I'm getting hurt. And then it's taking me 9 years to become Australian champion. And even 6 weeks out from the Australian Championships, I had an accident and I stretched the ligaments in my ankle. So I had 6 weeks where I couldn't ride. Also on this journey, 6 guys tried to kill me. I ended up in hospital with operations, and I got the scar there and the plates and the pins in the arm. So I was always getting setbacks, and I always had to get back up on my feet. So eventually 2006 came around, and it was like all the stars aligned. And I'd finally made the decision. I said to myself, no more mucking around. No more injuries. Let's just make it happen this year. And I become the Australian champion. And I think the glory for me was it took so long to get there that I appreciated it so much. For me, I didn't care about other people's acknowledgement. I appreciated what I had done because I knew what I had to go through to get there. And so that created solid foundations for business. So by the time 2007 comes around, there's an opportunity for me to go to Dubai. And they brought me in as an Australian champion athlete, and I started to train locals and expatriates. I was on television, I was on the radio, I was in the magazines, and I loved it because I had that passion and I knew I'd created. I didn't feel like an imposter, where a lot of other people, in their first year, they become an Australian champion, and the next year they could never back it up. Where I went the opposite way. I failed non-stop, and I got it. And what I learned from that today is what I teach people in business. It's about resiliency once again.